the traffic,
the boss, the baby,
the dog. Calgon, take me away. Hope and Heath, you obviously remember that old Calgon commercial that aired in the late 70s, right?
We sure do, Heidi. What a catchy commercial that was. We tend to remember those catchy commercials in TV shows, like Conjunction Junction, what's your function?
What's
You guys remember
function?
that? Oh, yeah.
Totally. Yes.
Schoolhouse Rock.
Yes.
Schoolhouse
Rock rocked. Interplanet
Yeah, it
Jam.
rocked. It did rock.
She's a galaxy gal.
It rocked with Capitol Bill. Capitol Hill. The poor Bill sitting on Capitol Hill, waiting to be passed or vetoed.
Exactly.
The president vetoes.
Yeah, lots of memorable stuff coming out of the 70s and early 80s, right, guys?
For sure.
All right. Well, you remember the commercial, but do you remember just how stressed the woman in that commercial was? It seemed like kind of like at the end of her long day, all she wanted to do was come home, take a Calgon bubble bath, and forget all of her responsibilities for just one moment. Have the two of you ever felt that way?
Yes, all the time.
All
Come
the
home
time.
from work and just want to slip right into a bath. But you know, it's funny. I even think when we were kids and we heard that commercial, you couldn't relate at all. You just thought it was like a catchy tune. And now we can all relate. Now, can't we?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. And I mean, it's obvious you guys have felt this way. So we're appealing to the listeners, right? Like, listeners, if you've ever felt this way, stress at the end of a long day, attempting to balance work and life demands, of course, without losing your mind. And also, you too have wanted to say, Calgon, take me away. Stay tuned. This podcast is the right one for you.
Hey, friends. It's Heather.
It's Hope. And it's Heidi. And this is Finding Our Way Through. All right. So if you listened to our last episode, you know we discussed navigating career paths. This time around, we thought we'd dive into a topic that goes hand in glove with our last topic, the ever-present, quite challenging topic of work-life balance. You know, guys, as many of our listeners know, that work-life balance, which can be so hard to find, is really us trying to find harmony between the responsibilities we have in our professional lives and the ones that we have in our personal lives, which, according to so many sources, including National Institutes of Health, is critical to our well-being. And so if you're anything like the three of us, you know that finding that healthy balance can be really hard to achieve.
It sure can. Yeah. So many responsibilities and not enough time.
Yeah, never enough time.
No one gives you time. They just take.
It's the one thing you can't get back. It does feel like that, doesn't it? Like the take, and the challenge of you can't get that time back. So you want to make sure you try to manage it as best you can. Well, guys, as we talk about this topic today, we're going to talk about, of course, the personal experiences you all have had attempting to find that balance. And we hope to offer some helpful suggestions to anyone listening as well, as they try to navigate their own work-life balance. Okay?
Yeah, sounds awesome. I'm laughing because it makes me cry thinking about it.
Yeah. And also, too, I think the three of us, as we've been preparing for this podcast, have been laughing a lot. So I think we still have a little slap happiness in us.
I think so.
But before we start the conversation, wanted just to say that this podcast and the opinions, ideas, and views that are expressed here are solely the podcast authors or individuals participating in the podcast, and they don't represent ideas or opinions of our employers, past or present. All right, guys, so imagine you're on the diving board because guess what time it is?
I'm afraid to ask.
Okay.
The diving board of croc.
It's time to jump right in. Not
A good one, Heidi.
not to
That
water
was
in a
good.
pool or the water at Crocker Park that we talked about in one of our other podcasts, but we're diving into the topic for this episode.
We're diving into deep water, not shallow
I
water
know.
here. Sweet.
How cheesy is that, huh?
It's great. It was hilarious. Good job, Heidi.
The diving board. That's good. Okay, so okay, Heath and Hope. Since the struggle to find this balance, the work-life balance is ongoing, and since we've had several opportunities to talk about our attempts, excuse me, to choking over my words here, to find what can feel like at times an elusive balance, I want you to share with our listeners, okay, what it is that you've been trying to balance over the years. I guess, Hope, you can take this one. And if
Yeah.
Heather and I have anything to add, we will. But it sounds like we'd probably have a lot of the same things to say. So why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you used the image of a diving board. I guess I'll use the image of a balance beam here, right? Like if you're a world-class gymnast, you'd be excited about the reference to a balance beam. But for most of the rest of us,
Does it have to be world-class gymnast?
it might be a young child who's just starting it.
That's true.
I was just
In
saying
gymnastics.
for most of the rest of us, when you get up on a balance beam, you realize like you're trying to like keep your balance and not It's
fall
hard.
in one way or the other.
Hard not to fall off. So Heidi, so to your question, what is it that I've been trying to balance over the years? I would say a lot, right? Over the years, I've had to balance what I would imagine you too, and every other working parent in the world has to balance, which is work and the rest of life. And the rest of life would mean taking care, for me, the rest of life would mean taking care of my kids, dealing with childcare, taking care of the house, things like food shopping, preparing meals, doing the laundry, cleaning, running errands. I have a dog, so caring for my dog.
Helping with homework.
That too. Incorporating, I think for me, self-care has always been, important. Meaning like exercise, spirituality, which for me over the years has been yoga, and really trying to, continue to do things for me. And after all of that, also continue to be my husband's girlfriend. So Calgon, take me away is right on.
That's it? That's all you have to balance?
Exactly.
Are you a weak woman?
Yeah, there's a lot going on
There's
there.
a lot going on.
Yeah. So is there anything, Heidi or Heather, that you would like to add to what I just said?
Heidi?
I honestly think that what you had to say was good. I probably would say something very similar, just like I said, in terms of overlap. So I don't really. What about you, Heather?
I think I would say the same thing. I mean, Hope, you covered it in a lot of detail there. There's just a lot. There's a lot that can keep you on the balance beam, and a lot that can make you fall off the balance beam. And it's hard finding that actual balance.
It's kind of like the juggling act you were talking about, right, Heath?
Yeah, I mean, my goodness, if you think about a juggler continuously throwing balls in the air, hoping one doesn't drop, and the idea that he can, continuously stand, throw, and catch is just not realistic. Eventually, a few balls are going to drop.
Aren't we all jugglers?
We're all jugglers, and that juggling act though changes right, depending on your life stage or your life situation.
Yeah,
we're juggling lots of things.
Jugglers, we're gymnasts.
Yeah,
on a balance beam.
Yeah,
we just want to take a bath.
We're divers.
We just want a bubble bath to take all of our stress away.
We're divers.
We're jumpers and divers.
I love the silliness today. It's good. All right. Well, Hope, that was great. And Heather, thanks for adding the juggling act piece. So it sounds like, Hope, you talked for us, and it sounds like it's been very real for you, like that idea about trying to balance a lot of the commitments and responsibilities.
Yeah.
Across those various settings, like you said, not just work and home, but all the other settings we interact with in our own personal lives.
Yeah.
So now that we know what it is we've been trying to balance, I want to shift to things that, you guys have done to impose that balance. So, Heath, maybe you want to start with things you've done to impose the balance?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that, we got through it really by building, well, I shouldn't say got through it because it's a continual thing, right? I'm not sure there's really ever a perfect balance. I think
It's
that's
hard to find it.
impossible.
It's hard to strike a balance,
Yeah.
It
especially
is
when you're working.
It is very hard to strike that balance. And again, it goes back to what Heidi said earlier about setting realistic expectations and understanding that, it's probably, you're probably never going to have a perfect balance, right? You just kind of have to pick and choose. But I think for us, it was really about building a strong support system. You both know, and as I referenced on our podcast last week, my job has long, inflexible hours. And historically, I was expected to be in the office 5 days a week.
We know what you're going to
Because
say.
you know what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Because while I've
That
had
was
a little bit
pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID.
while I've had a little bit more flexibility post-COVID, do my
Listeners,
thumbs up.
she's a little obsessed with post-COVID work environments.
Little
FYI.
obsessed
You'll
with
hear.
post-COVID because it's changed my life. But
For the better.
for the better. With one day a week work from home, it really helps. But our support system is what helped us, really kind of impose some semblance of balance. So what I mean is, Matt ran his own business. So over the years, he's really been able to adjust his schedule so that he could have a lot more flexibility in his day than I did. And that was really important, especially when the kids were little, because he
Yeah.
could help with school drop off, pick up, after school activities at times. And, unlike you guys, we were very fortunate to have a lot of family around us
Yeah, good point.
on
Yeah.
both sides. So that meant that we had great childcare, with my sister-in-law, Kate. I mean, thank God for Kate. She's like my children's second mom. But we also had Matt's parents, siblings, and also our siblings to help when we needed. And we were extremely lucky to have that. And again, if like you guys, you don't have family around, I would just say, try to develop a support system that includes friends, colleagues, or faith communities, because it can help provide the support system you need to help get through it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sounds like the family support was incredible. I'm so happy that
Incredible.
you had that.
And we
That-
recognize that
Lucky.
we're
I mean,
in the
definitely.
lucky few that have that. So, what about you,
Super
Hope or Hyde?
lucky. Heidi, you want me to take that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, I mean, gosh, I'm not sure that in the years when I was a working full-time out of the house mom, that I ever did really find that balance. I always really felt like I was
Mhm.
trying to do too much. I would imagine those in a similar position would feel the same, whether we're working out of the home or we're stay-at-home parenting. But I guess I would say in order to have some balance, and make sure I was able to work out of the home, I had to find great child care. And Heather, unlike you, with a lot of family around, I didn't have the option of, looking to family, which I think is a whole different level of stress, right? Because I had to
Yeah.
find
Incredible
child
level of stress.
care. Yeah, in a
That was
city.
true for me too, Hope.
Yeah.
I
So
totally
Heidi,
relate to what you're saying.
so like trying to find childcare in a location where you don't have family, it's again, like it's putting your trust and your faith in caregivers that are total strangers who then oddly become a pretty significant part of life.
Yeah.
Stressful for sure, but I was really lucky to have had a few really wonderful women over the years that were able to come into my house and care for my kids. Do a little shout out to Gracie, Chelsea, and Nick. They were amazing, and I couldn't have done it without them. Other things I did to balance the life part of the equation was to ensure I was with my kids as much as I could be. So that included working one day from home. And Heather, hold on to your seat here. That was pre-COVID.
And what's happened post-COVID?
This was
We'll talk about post-COVID.
staying
The
at home.
infrastructure, the technology exists.
Yeah. Post-COVID, maybe a little bit less so pre, even though we still had computers and stuff. So, but to be at home one day a week, being a full-time working mother, this was a novel. It was a novel idea 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And I was really, really lucky with that. Other things.
That was a good vocabulary word.
What? Which word?
Novel.
Novel.
That's a novel idea
Thank
20
you.
years ago.
Not a book. Not a book. A new idea.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So now we're
We didn't need Investopedia or Wikipedia for that one.
or dictionary.com, right?
Not today, we don't.
Not today. We don't. We have me. We have hope. Um,
Hope.
so
Hope is our dictionary today.
exactly. All right. So I don't know. A few other things I did. I mean, I really did set a standard time for when I left the office each day, so that I
Yeah.
was home to make dinner for the kids each night.
Kind of setting that boundary for yourself.
Is that a good
Yes.
thing or a bad thing? What would your
That's
children say?
That's funny, Heather. That's a funny question.
I'm
My
kidding.
kids would say they were happy I was home, maybe less happy that I was the one making the dinner. Their grilled chicken and pesto pasta or their meatloaf and mashed potatoes, which
No
they still
salmon and
think I
salad?
make every night. Salmon was on the menu, but I think
We've ruined
probably
it for them.
over menued. Yeah,
I'm
not for
only kidding.
Maggie,
You're a great
for
cook.
Henry for sure.
Okay.
And then, of course, I would say, for self-care, I would exercise in the early morning or after, the kids were in bed, honestly. And I would also say, thank God for technology as a means to stay in touch with extended family and friends. Without that, I don't know if those relationships would have fallen, by the wayside. And when I think about it, I'm not really sure how I managed to do all the household chores, shopping, cooking, laundry, all the stuff we talked about earlier. Jim did help. He helped a bit, but he was, as you both know, he was busy trying to build a company and he was worrying about the well-being of 50 plus employees. And he was carrying a ton of stress at the time during all of those years. And so in all honesty, I did carry a bulk of the household chores.
The majority of it, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
think a lot of women do, though.
I
Right?
think it falls on one person, right? So there's generally an imbalance, I think, when it comes to the household stuff. So I really believe that, when people are in the craziness of raising kids and building careers, it's super difficult. And the thing that suffers most likely is sleep because you have to figure out how to fit all that stuff in. And the one place you typically give, I know I did, I can imagine others would be, sleeping less. And I think it's gotten a lot better for younger generations post COVID, Heather. You probably agree.
Post-COVID.
but
I was
back
getting
when we
ready for
were
Hope to say that to you, Heather.
back in the
Thank you
day,
both.
back in the day when we were raising our kids, I would say it was super tough. And I still think the concept of work-life balance is hard to manage. I think, something gives somewhere. And so I think that the trick is prioritizing the most important things.
Did you take a sleep aid? Any melatonin?
That's a really funny question. I've never used melatonin. Some folks in my household, do, but I've never used melatonin. Have either of you?
Yeah,
I take melatonin a lot.
I actually take a melatonin L-theanine combination gummy at night. That helps me a ton. The L-theanine is actually I think it helps me more than the melatonin does.
And
Something I learned
take the
about
gummy
both
too.
of you today.
Well,
Always
I take
learning.
I take the gummy though because
Always
that's
learning.
part of my menopause, my inability to sleep
Yeah.
in menopause, and it really helps.
Well, shout out to our second podcast on menopause?
Yep,
Yeah, it was.
If anyone's interested in hearing more about that, check that out.
that's right.
So I mean, those are some of the things that I did to impose a balance. Heidi, what would you say about how you managed to impose that balance?
I mean, it's kind of similar to what you were just alluding to in terms of, the weight of responsibility sometimes can fall on like one person versus the other in a partnership. But yeah, I mean, I think during times when I was working outside the home, Todd, who I know our listeners know is my husband, and we adjusted traditional expectations to allow for healthier family to develop, right? Like the division of labor, I think really became a key negotiation for us. And
Yep.
I think that that's true for a lot of couples as they try to balance the demands of work and family.
And Heidi, I would imagine that would be true when, the two of you were busy raising kids, but also now that your kids are out of the house, it's likely still something that you try and work through.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. But I think, it's a little easier just because we don't have the demands of, caring for kids and I mean, our dinners are basically pretty easy. We do a lot of HelloFresh meals, and I just recently found Trader Joe's to be helpful for us in terms of stuff that we make at night that's really easy, but not
You
having to
don't make
cook.
grilled you don't make grilled chicken and and
I
pesto
don't
pasta or mashed
Or
potatoes
meatloaf
I don't do the
and
meatloaf
meatloaf?
and yeah, no. I don't know if I ever really made meatloaf. Maybe I made like a turkey meatloaf at some point in time. But I would have welcomed your kids over to my house anytime
Thank you.
to give them a little differentiation.
I'm
But
sure they would appreciate that.
back to what I was saying about, just balancing the demands of work in a more equitable way. It's kind of the idea of like who does what and how much. And I think
That's a good
those
point.
are common questions that really challenge families in their attempts to fairly share in the division of the responsibilities. And I think this is where the need for good communication comes in
Yeah.
and where partnership is really truly tested when, both parents are working outside the home. So that idea of like, will you move toward me and understand the stress of working and caregiving? What are you willing to do to take some stress or load off of my plate? I see you have a great deal of responsibility as well, husband or wife, and want to honor that. But how can we work together to honor one another and the choices that the both of us made to have kids and to work simultaneously? So that's all really I would say in terms of sort of, how I tried to kind of impose that balance when I was working outside the home.
Yeah,
And
I
Heidi, I
think the
was just
key.
gonna. Oh,
Go
sorry,
ahead, Heather.
Hopi.
No, you go.
I was just going to say, just one thing to say too is I think it's really important to have those conversations actually with your significant others, even prior to marriage, really, because it's not something you really think about when you're younger. But I think it's important to think about, how you're going to split chores and what's going to happen if you ultimately have a family together, et cetera. I just think it's important conversations to have that
Yeah.
that often don't take place. I think
Yeah. And hopefully, you can get that in like premarital
counseling.
counseling or whatever,
Yep.
couples do before they're really considering that lifelong commitment to one another. So that's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Hope we're going
great
to say
point. I
something.
think, yeah, well, I was going to say the most important thing I think you said about, trying to figure out the balance of the household chores, like splitting responsibility is the key to that is communication. And
Definitely.
that's what I picked up from what you said. I also think though, trying to have those conversations prior to getting married, I think is a great idea. I think a lot of people get sort of lost in the idea of, they get like, it's a word I'm looking for. They're so excited.
Starry-eyed.
Yeah, they're so starry eyed. And
Our life is going to be like,
our life's going to be amazing.
a
And
fairy tale.
they don't think through what the actual experience of marriage will be.
Yeah. It's like the
And
ideal
yeah,
versus real.
the ideal versus the real. Yeah. And so Heather, your point on kind of trying to sort of think through the real is a great idea.
Yeah, it just goes back to the comment about communication.
Yeah.
It comes down to good communication.
Wow. It
Right.
sounds like we're all on the same page on that one.
It does.
Yeah. And how hard it really can be for people to actually like state what they need and say what they want. And again, just to throw a little shout out to therapy. I mean, if that's challenging and people are having a hard time doing it, I would say access, good couples therapy or talk to people in faith communities, whether it's a rabbi, whether it's a minister, somebody that can help iron out some of the differences that are coming up and the tension that's being created. So, all right, well, so moving on, guys, not to be repetitive, but like what ideas or suggestions can you provide to help those in our listening community best manage the balance as they try to navigate it as well? And I guess I'll start off if that's okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I haven't done that in all of our podcasts. I think I always let
I
you
like
guys
this,
start off.
Hyde.
So
Yeah, me
shout
too.
out to, doing
Shout out to
something
you.
different.
That's right.
So I
Shout
would
out
just
to shaking it up.
yeah, shake, shake. Okay. So I'd just say create a weekly schedule. Some of us feel obviously better if we're more organized. And if you don't really feel organized, I think it's going to be harder finding that life work balance. I know for my husband and I, we had like every Sunday night, we had weekly planning meetings. And
That's a
honestly,
great idea.
we did it really for a long time when the kids were younger, so that we knew what we had coming up, whether it was like at work,
That's such a
if
good idea.
one of us
Yeah.
was going to be out of the house, like, during the week after work, at home, like with the kids at school, what sort of responsibilities like they had, kids and extracurriculars, things like that. So it really just helped us so much to be on the same page and to be informed about these things so that we weren't really caught off guard.
So Heidi, did you have that discussion and then put it down? Like, did you document it, or did you have
Yeah,
the
we used a
discussion?
calendar. Yeah,
Okay.
we always had a calendar in front of us.
Yeah.
So we just look at the week coming up and we'd sort of say, okay, I've got this, I've got that, I've got, or the kids have this, the kids have that. So we didn't have this like master schedule like I know some people have where it's like everything's highlighted in different colors. Like that was
Yeah.
definitely not us.
Yeah.
But it helped literally like just to sit down and have the opportunity to just get on the same page
Yeah,
at
that's a
night.
great
So
idea.
it was like built into our schedule, like Sunday nights we're gonna do that. So anyway.
That's awesome, Hyde, because I do think that organization is really half the battle. Or it might be 80% of the battle, but being organized is really what.
Super helpful.
Yeah, I think it
Yeah.
really is super helpful. And then, I guess I would just say, to the extent that you can, talk to your boss and maybe ask to create a more flexible schedule. And again,
And we know.
I think this
And
is a
we
lot more
know.
doable. What, ladies?
Wait for it. Drum roll.
You tell me.
Post-COVID.
That's right.
Post-COVID.
Post-COVID, given why
Heather,
technology
why?
technology infrastructure exists and management trusts that you're at home doing work,
Yes.
which is different versus pre-COVID.
Now all of our listeners know why it's possible to have flexibility in your job post-COVID.
Absolutely. And,
Heather
I
Finn
I
quote.
think that,
Heather Finn quote, the technology and infrastructure exists.
well,
Maybe we'll make a meme about that
do
and
I
put
have
it
to
on
say
social media.
it does, because it was forced on companies. Zoom. Did we know Zoom before COVID? The infrastructure exists and management trusts that we're getting our jobs done.
One more quote by Heather Finn.
Thank you very
Oops,
much.
Way to
Thank
I was
you.
just going to
Thank
clap
you.
for you,
Thank
Heather.
you.
Okay.
Very
Thank you so
exciting.
much, you guys. That makes me
Yeah.
feel so good.
Hope about you. Any
Yeah,
other
I
bits?
mean, I think a lot of companies have gotten better about recognizing, when employees are, maybe tired or exhausted, feeling overwhelmed.
Yep.
So, one thing would be to plan some mental health days off, maybe put those into the calendar. A lot of companies treat them differently than vacation days these days. So I would definitely say, use your vacation time accordingly.
Yep.
Absolutely use it, take it, take your mental health days. And I do know one thing I did earlier in my career was to ask for a leave of absence. I know some companies will do that. Some companies will not. It was an unpaid leave of absence, but they guaranteed me my job back when I came back, so I could go do something that was important to me. So some folks in our listening community may want to think about that as well.
What was that thing that was important to you? Do you want to share?
I sure would like to share. I went down and did a yoga teacher training, and yeah, loved it. It was a great experience, and I was really into yoga at the time and wanted to teach, and so needed to do it and didn't know when I would be able to find the time to do it. So I talked to my boss at the time, and the company was great, and they allowed me the ability to do that. And Heather,
That's awesome.
it might be the case that post-COVID, some companies may be more open to that.
I think so. I think you just need to have an honest conversation with your boss.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's great.
Anything else?
Yeah, what I was going to say, I think I've already said, just in terms of like, just making sure that you're stating what your needs are. If you're in a married situation or living with somebody, have a conversation with them about what you're trying to manage and figure out how to split the household chores, like I talked about a little bit earlier.
Yep. And so another thing I would suggest would just be, if you're asked to take on more work,
Yeah.
I think it's really important to know what your limit is and recognize that it is okay to say no, right? And I recognize again that it might be more difficult to do if you're earlier in your career, But interestingly, I think I was telling you guys this. I was just listening to a recent podcast, and both Jane Fonda and Carol Burnett were interviewed about advice that they would give to, the younger generation.
Oh,
And
cool.
the first thing both of them said was that my advice is this: early in life, learn that no is a complete sentence, meaning it's okay to say no and set that boundary. So I think
Yeah.
that I think that's a great, no is a complete sentence. It's going to be one of my new quotes.
Yeah, and Heath, I think it's maybe a little bit hard, when kids are starting off. When I
Yep.
say kids,
Absolutely. Early
when
in your career, it's very
yeah,
difficult.
earlier in a career, it's hard to say no. I think primarily because these their folks are building their career, and
Right.
they want to be seen as saying yes and taking on more work.
Absolutely.
But I do think it's really important, even early in your career, if you're overwhelmed, you absolutely can say no and not worry about repercussions.
Right.
That's
I mean,
hard to
Yeah, it is
it's
hard
definitely
to
harder to do early in your
it's
career,
hard
but
to
I think it's
navigate
something
it.
you need to learn
it's hard to
earlier in your
navigate
career.
it. Exactly. It's very hard to navigate it. So do your best.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, something else I might say, we haven't really talked about, something I said earlier, which was, in managing the life part of life of the work-life balance, just, continuing for me to be my husband's girlfriend.
Woo
And
woo.
yeah, and for him to continue to
Keep the
be my
sparks
boyfriend, keep the
alive.
spark alive.
Yep.
I would suggest, giving yourselves a night out, to just do something specifically with your partner, focus that time and energy at least, I don't know, one night a week or one night every other week. And I feel so funny saying that because I think it's super important. I think it's something that can benefit, a lot of folks in our listening community. I didn't necessarily prioritize that. But I think it's a great suggestion if folks can manage it.
Yeah,
Yes.
you could
Probably a lot easier,
if
Heather.
you're
Post-COVID,
Yeah.
post-COVID.
a little more
Yeah.
flexibility, a little more flexibility in your schedule.
Yes.
So pre or post-COVID, when you're having your weekly, planning meeting, you can put in your date with your spouse or your
Exactly.
partner
Put it on the calendar.
on
Put
the
it on the
calendar.
calendar. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
Hyde, what I was going to say is, you had recently mentioned, these rhyming commercials, the Angeli
Yep.
commercials.
Yep.
I was going to say, Hope brings home the bacon, fries it up in a pan, and never lets him forget he's a man.
That's right.
If you're paying attention to that commercial, you smell good too, Hope. So
For those of
hopefully.
you in our listening community
Kudos,
who
Hope.
don't know Anjali, it was a perfume a long time ago, which I
Yes,
think still is a perfume, but maybe under a different name.
maybe. It's
It
like
came out about
Calgon.
the same time the Calgon commercial did.
It
So
was. Mhm.
Calgon
shout
bubble
out to
bath.
all the old commercials from the 70s
Shout
that we
out to
seem to still
everyone in our
remember.
generation who
Right.
can laugh along with us
Shout out
because
to all
we
the old
remember the
rhyming
jingles.
commercials that we all remember.
Exactly.
Oh, well, I love all these suggestions so far. I mean, I was just thinking too, like, I think one of the biggest challenges these days is technology. And so I would just say, like, when you get home, try to unplug, no phones, no computers, so that you can really just be present. And like Hope just said, I mean, she felt like she didn't really totally prioritize the date night, but I mean, I'm saying, if I'm being honest, I didn't always do this, like unplug. Um,
Yeah.
when I got home or have that kind of rule for the kids when they were old enough to start, getting smartphones. Um, but I do know that when we were on vacation, that was always something that we had, a basket where, all of us put our electronic devices and we like pledge not to use them for a period of time. So maybe at home, if you're just trying to unwind and reconnect with your spouse, your kids, really try to have that little space that you create, a basket or whatever you want to put those things into, and, sit down, have dinner, interact with one another in real time, like FaceTime in real time, not on, your phone. I think that can go a long way in terms of just helping people feel, connected to one another.
Oh, that's great, Hyde. And again, as I think about it too, it goes back to connecting, right, with your kids. And I think it's important to prioritize, taking your kids to school, at least one day a week. if not more. Or, you can at least have a conversation with your boss about potentially trying to leave work a little bit early, to pick the kids up from school again. And I think for me, it was something that because of my, inflexible hours wasn't something that I
On Wall Street
prioritized. Yeah, it wasn't something I
before
prioritized.
COVID,
Yes,
not
this was
post-COVID.
pre-COVID, but post-COVID, and actually when I was still working from home and my kids were back in school, I really recognized how much I loved the opportunity to bring them to school and to pick them up from school. And it wasn't really until then that I really realized how much I was missing, just in that time. I mean, it's such a great time to connect and have a conversation.
Yeah, it's the best.
Yep.
So I was just thinking too, for folks that are trying to prioritize self-care. I know one thing I did, and this might help some folks in our listening community. I used to put workout time on my actual work calendar. I would look at my day and I would, select time either in the morning and or a lunchtime. And I would, make meetings sort of around that time. So I would actually like block out time on the calendar. The time that I would do that would depend on the day, on the week. But having it in my calendar, I treated it like something that had to be done. And so that was super helpful to me. It ensured that I was finding the time to actually practice that self care.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't know
awesome.
if either of you ever did that, actually putting it in a schedule, but it really helped.
Yeah, I did for sure. I don't know how the few did, but
No, it was never on my schedule. Again, it goes back to the long,
Pre-COVID.
inflexible
Pre-COVID.
hours
Work
and
hours.
the expectation
You
of
survived
where you're
Wall
supposed to
Street
be
and
at what
continue
time.
to.
Surviving Wall Street, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, along with the self-care, I mean, I would say too, just feed your spiritual side. So, I mean, seek out your faith community, whether it's a church, a synagogue, a mosque,
Yeah.
yoga, hope, like you mentioned about
Yep.
your spirituality. Use solitude, silence, prayer, meditation, anything that can really help de-stress and calm down an activated nervous system can be extremely helpful. And I know that, um, prayer, solitude, silence are means by which you can do that. So I think that's a really important thing to try to do.
Yeah, I think that's a really great suggestion, Hyde. And I think also too, it goes back to like anybody trying to balance life and work, and if they're feeling really overwhelmed or stressed or anxious, I think we've all talked about seeking therapy at different points in our lives, and I think seeking therapy is an option for folks who are feeling really overwhelmed and anxious.
Yeah, I think great suggestions there. I also think friends can be a super helpful outlet as
For
well,
sure.
right? Just time to sit and talk and laugh and relax. And so spending time with friends, like actually prioritizing time out with friends. If you can't do it weekly or biweekly, maybe it's something that you look to put into your schedule once a month. And so me and all my good friends, me and all my good friends in Philadelphia see each other a lot. We're laughing because I don't have a ton of friends in Philadelphia. But it's
Well,
good. It's all
You do
good.
book clubs and wine nights.
you have
Mhm.
With
friends.
all
You
those
have friends in us. You got a friend in me.
Exactly.
You got a friend in Heather, like Buzz Lightyear.
You
And
got a friend in us.
My
Yeah.
book club and wine night is me with a glass of wine and a book sitting in a chair, but it's all good.
it's okay. But I do like that
That's
hope. I
kind.
mean, that's something that I know I've been doing recently. Like
Yeah,
once a month,
spending
I
time with
meet.
friends.
Yeah, I meet like 5 other women for dinner, and so it's just great to have that to look forward to on the calendar. But yeah, another thing I would say too is like, even though pets people have our responsibility, they don't really put any demand on you. They actually are like super comforting and calming. And so yeah, like just suggest try to enjoy your pets. If you have a little dog, try to, at least I do. I have a little dog. I don't have a big dog or a medium-sized dog. But
No, but it's
anyway,
true
just
though. Dogs are, animals are,
super calming. They're like
they are
so
calming.
therapeutic.
Yeah.
And so just, recommend taking short walks with your dog to de-stress or spend time with your pets. And like lately, because the job I have, I can take my dog with me to work. And
It's so
most
great.
of the people that I'm working with really are very receptive to her, and she is a comforting, calming presence. So that's exciting.
That is
Anyway.
She must
exciting.
love that.
Yeah, she does.
And great suggestion. Playing with your pet is always a good option. Now,
Have you got anything else?
I would just say, if you're in a completely inflexible job,
Like you are,
like
at
I
least
am,
pre-COVID.
and I have not thought hard about leaving. However, you should if you're in a really inflexible job, I think it's something to think hard about finding a new one that has more flexibility. Obviously easier said than done, but it's something to think about.
Yeah, it's a good point. I also think, in a work environment, I think it's just really important to mention the power of doing. What I mean by that is, if you want to be in a great culture, be vocal about it. Talk to human resources, make
Yes.
suggestions. They may take some, they may not. But what I want to say is that, be the culture you want to create. So,
Right.
to the extent that you can be a culture carrier, Heather, I think I heard that word from you based
Mm-hmm.
on something the organization that you work in uses, right? The term,
Correct.
I think, but
Yep.
I think it's such a great,
Yeah.
a great word, because I think it applies not just to work, but really to everything in life. Each person has the ability to be a culture carrier,
Right. I
on
mean,
a
we have
sports team,
internal family
in a
systems,
family, on
family
a sports
cultures.
team, within a work organization. Be the change you want to see.
I think that's an excellent point.
Yeah.
And then I think the last thing that I would just say is that, you know, for work-life balance, I think you really have to put the onus back on companies. I really believe that they need to build cultures that are really inclusive and supportive work environments for parents. There's many things they can do. We've all talked about helping with flexible schedules or hours, but a really important one too would be to help with, reliable, affordable, subsidized childcare. Because, we know that a recent Pew study showed that half of U.S. families really struggle to secure affordable and reliable childcare.
Yeah.
Heather, I'm going to jump in for a second too. I was
Please.
reading, I think it was an article. It was maybe last week or the week before. I think it was the April 8th edition of the Wall Street Journal. They had a great article in there around how companies are beginning to offer subsidized childcare, and in the article specifically, on-site childcare. So as parents
Phenomenal.
come to work,
That's
their
awesome.
kids go to a company provided childcare, which is completely subsidized. So,
Wow.
parents can see kids during the day, and they're able to afford having their kids in
Yep.
childcare. And it's just one of those things that a company can do to support its employees,
Yeah, it's
keep
awesome.
their employees happy, and keep their employees,
Best way to
period.
retain an employee is to
Keep them happy.
correct.
Yeah. hmm
Are those Heather Finn and Hope Morrissey quotes, or
Yes.
The keep them happy is definitely a Heather Finn quote. I think I've heard her say it as much as I've heard her say post-COVID. Post-COVID,
My
the
favorites.
infrastructure exists.
Culture carrier too. Yeah.
Yeah, culture carrier is a great one. I love that.
Yeah, it's
Well,
a great one.
so many companies struggle to retain good employees, especially good women. And it goes back to culture, right? Creating a culture where people feel valued, respected, and happy, right? Keeping employees happy is the best way to retain them. And
Yeah,
little
and
things make them happy, but certainly subsidized childcare.
That's
yeah,
huge.
That's
That's
yeah,
huge.
it
that's
is
a
huge.
huge
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Absolutely huge. Yeah.
Well, you guys have made such great points. So that was fun, just kind of sort of thinking about ways that things we've done to try to impose that balance. And hopefully the suggestions that we've made have been helpful for our listeners. So,
We certainly hope so.
yeah. So, as we come to like an end of the podcast, I wanted to say something about single parents. Because, the
Absolutely.
three of
Yeah,
us,
please.
we are so fortunate and blessed to have spouses that are so supportive and helpful. But for single parents, for those of you doing this on your own, working and trying to raise a family alone or as a co-parent, we can imagine how difficult the space you find yourself in truly is. The three of us we've not been single parents and don't know experientially what that's like. We did, though, have the experience of living in a single parent home for 9 years after our father passed away when we were 13. And so we saw the toll that raising 4 teenage girls took on our mother. She worried all the time about finances, because, she worked at home and she lived off of our father's pension. She worried a lot, about so many things, but
So many things.
I think she was so thankful to have help from her older adult children, our older siblings, so that the supportive family was incredibly helpful for her.
Yeah.
But we knew from our lived experience how exhausted she was. So to single parents, we're not going to try to offer advice to you because it's not ours to give. But we hope that you find the support you need to find your way through with the resources that may be available to you wherever you live. And, some of the things that we mentioned above could be helpful, especially that access to faith based communities, um, where there are people that are service oriented and would be happy to help create or provide like meals to you at times when you feel like a reprieve from meal prep could be really truly welcomed. If struggling with paying bills periodically, see what kind of benevolence fund help might be available, or check out whether faith based communities you're a part of offer counseling and therapy help, because some absolutely do. It can just be so helpful to have a space to talk to someone about the stress of it all, and it leaves folks feeling a little less alone than they may be feeling. So I know I've just worked with several clients who are single parents, and I continually stand in awe of their resourcefulness, their strength, and their resiliency. They're just amazing individuals. So I just wanted to make sure we mentioned that, made note of just the people that are trying to do this all alone.
Yeah, I'm so glad.
Absolutely.
So glad you did, Heidi.
Yeah.
So much
So
respect.
much respect.
Yeah. So before we come to an end, do you guys have anything else you want to add or say before we do, the characteristic sign off?
No, I just think I would say hopefully some of the tidbits that we've mentioned here today can help folks in our listening community try to do a better job of helping manage the kind of the ongoing work-life balance,
The juggling act.
the juggling act.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that. Cause that's our goal, right? The goal of the podcast is just to hope that we're helping some people with the
Offering
things
some
that,
suggestions.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, well, great. Well, Heath, take it
Yeah,
away.
no, I would just say, thanks again to our listening community for joining us today. Remember that you can find us at Finding Our Way Through on all of the podcast platforms. That's Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Please hit subscribe to follow us, like us, help spread the word about the community that we're trying to build. And, again, we hope that after listening to today's podcast that you know that you're not alone in your effort to balance life and work. So this is Heather.
Hope.
And Heidi.
And until next week, remember, you got this.
You've got this.
You've got this.